It should be one of the happiest times of your life when you find out you're going to have a child. Brittany Eldridge was the same. When she found out she was going to have a baby, she was thrilled. Brittany had already started choosing names, paint colors, clothes, and everything else. But she had no idea that she wouldn't make it to meet her little bundle of joy. In the case of Brittany Eldridge, not one, but two innocent people died. The worst part is that the police knew for sure who the killer was. Unfortunately, it was very hard to find evidence against this person, and the investigation didn't turn up anything that Brittany's family was hoping for. Brittany Eldridge's case is sad and hard to understand. It shows how important evidence is and how one mistake can throw an investigation off track. The baby girl's parents are Robin Owens and Jeff Sherwood. She was born on January 13th, 1986. She lived with her brother Jeffrey in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a beautiful city. As a child, Brittany was known as a sweet girl who loved to love, even though that sounds like a cliché. When things like this happen, they always end up killing nice people. You never hear about mean people dying. Brittany, on the other hand, always saw the bright side of things. Family was the most important thing to Brittany. Mum and Dad of Brittany said she had a big heart. She loved being romantic and had a lot of love to give. Brittany was named her best friend by her brother. She liked her pink and pretty things, but she also liked sports and cheerleading and got along with everyone, boys and girls alike. At that time, Brittany was a young woman with many goals, but the most important one was to find the right person for her. She wanted to get married as soon as possible, and she met her husband, Terry Eldridge, as soon as she finished college. Brittany was 22 years old at the time, and Terry was 39 years old. Although Brittany and Terry were a lot of years apart in age, they were really drawn to each other because of how they were as people. Brittany was friendly, smart, and happy, while Terry was quiet, stable, and had a good head on his shoulders. Brittany didn't mind that they were so different from each other. In fact, some of the best marriages are between two people who are very different from each other. Being with someone who is so different from you makes you the whole package. In the end, Brittany found a good man and decided to settle down with him. After dating for a while, they got married and things were going well. They didn't agree on having kids though, which is where Brittany's marriage split. Brittany was meant to be a mom. If there was one thing she came here to do, it was become a mom. Terry didn't want kids though. Brittany knew this from the start, and she was okay with it at first, which is why they got married. But there was something missing in her life. And since Terry didn't change his mind about not wanting kids, it's safe to say that it bothered Brittany a lot. The two people were also quickly growing apart. Between them, their work schedules almost always clashed, which is probably why Terry didn't want to start a family, which makes sense. Brittany was working at Vanderbilt Mortgage and Finance, a mortgage company at the time. Terry, on the other hand, was a truck driver, and his shifts were long and unpredictable. There were some small problems in their marriage, but nothing major. The couple was just at a point in their lives where being apart was making them unhappy. At that point, Terry and Brittany had been married for 3 years. They were having a hard time in their lives, but they hadn't given up on their marriage yet, until Norman Clark, Brittany's co-worker, came into her life. As a child, Norman Clark dreamed of becoming a basketball player and getting drafted by the NBA. He was in his mid-20s at the time. The word for him was normal guy who was a charmer. Colleagues say that Norman and Brittany started working at Vanderbilt Mortgage and Finance on the same day as debt collectors. But Brittany was smarter than Norman and learned how to do her work faster. Because of this, He often asked Brittany for help. Norman told us that Brittany was a sharp and smart woman. Norman says that in the beginning, things were friendly and casual. Norman says that at first he didn't see anything in Brittany and only talked to her to find out more about their job. But as Norman and Brittany spent more time together, they instantly felt like they had a connection. One thing was wrong, though. Brittany, who was 25 years old, was married at the time. However, things would change a little after 8 months. At first glance, Brittany didn't seem like the kind of person who would cheat on her husband. She loved him and was honest. But as the months went by, things between her and Terry didn't get better, and it was clear that Brittany was giving up. Needs to feel love, connection, and life again badly. You guessed it. 8 months later, Norman and Brittany's friendship turned into something more, and soon, Brittany and Norman were dating. It's a secret item, but it's still an item. Brittany was married, and Norman knew about it. The two of them decided to keep their relationship a secret. They would talk and meet outside of work, but not at work. But the truth came out soon enough. In February 2011, Terry learned that Brittany had been cheating on him. This broke his heart and hurt him a lot, which was only natural. After this, the couple decided to split up. Brittany left the house she shared with Terry and moved into an apartment at the Cross Creek complex in Knoxville, Tennessee. She did this while Terry started the divorce process. As time went on, Norman and Brittany saw each other more and more, but then things took a different turn. Brittany told Robin, her mum, that she was pregnant with Norman's child. But there was something wrong. Norman and Brittany were not at all together. Norman saw his relationship with Brittany more as friends with benefits. He was seeing other women at the same time as Brittany, but none of them knew that he was seeing other women. A few years ago, Norman talked about his relationships with 15 to 20 women. One of them was Brittany, with whom he had a child. Though it's hard to believe, when you start an affair with someone, are you sure they'll be honest? You're having an affair, so it's safe to say that neither of you is being completely honest. But no matter what, Brittany had no idea about all the women Norman had been seeing. When she shocked Norman by telling him she was pregnant, he was so happy. You see, Norman was, to put it mildly, shady and not the type of man who would settle down anytime soon. But he loved being a dad and was responsible in that way. Norman gave his first child money and seemed to be involved in lots of ways in the child's life. He wanted to do the same thing with Brittany, but he didn't want to spend the rest of his life with her. He was fine with being with her child, but not with her. So the pregnancy went along normally, and soon, Brittany and Terry were no longer married. Norman and Brittany both went to regular appointments with her. Norman was there for Brittany through it all, and the couple even named their son Ezekiel, or Zeke. For the most part, things were going well for Brittany. She was finally about to give birth, and she was about to experience the best part of being a mother. Soon, though, things would quickly and tragically change. This would be the start of a long and confusing journey for Brittany's family and friends. In between, working at Vanderbilt Mortgage and Finance and getting ready to give birth in December 2011, Brittany took time off to work. But Brittany didn't show up for work one day, on December 13th, 2011, just 2 weeks before her due date. This worried her co-workers. Right off the bat, Brittany would never skip work without giving notice. But if she had, her co-workers might have thought something was wrong since she was almost full-time and might need help. Andrea, one of Brittany's co-workers, good friends, and the only person who seemed to know about her affair with Norman, went up to Norman and told him that Brittany wasn't there. She also suggested that Norman call Brittany's mom, Robin, to make sure everything was okay with her. Norman called Robin right away and asked her if she had seen Brittany. Robin was scared and tense after hearing this, so she went to Brittany's apartment to check on her. But when Robin got to the apartment, he walked up to the door and turned the knob. The door opened. When it was opened, Robin felt even more scared. When she walked into the apartment, the living room was the first thing she saw. It was a mess. What used to be Brittany's TV on the wall was now on the floor, badly broken. There were also 2 laptops on the floor and Brittany's purse lying around. There was no need for Robin to be told again that something bad had happened. She knew she had to call the police before she did anything else. Although Robin called 911, the operator told her to go back inside and check on Brittany to make sure she was okay. Robin did this, but it was a very bad idea. She heard something when she went into her daughter's room. The sound was like water running. She opened the bathroom door with the phone in her ear and her heart in her throat. Brittany, her daughter, was already dead in the overflowing bathtub. When Robin sprinted out of the house, police were already on their way to Brittany's apartment, which was now a crime scene, and a very bad one at that. Think about how Robin felt when she saw her daughter lying in her bathroom. No parent should ever have to see that, and the word traumatic doesn't even begin to cover it. When the police arrived, they quickly taped off the apartment and went into the bathroom. Brittany had died, and getting choked was the way she died. That wasn't all, though. Brittany also had injuries to her neck, and the police didn't need any more proof to understand how horrible Brittany's death was. What broke my heart even more was that Zeke also didn't make it. That same day, Brittany's friends and family were told the terrible and heartbreaking news. The police took Brittany's body away for an autopsy and forensic examination to look for anything that could help them find the person who killed her and her baby. From the outside, the apartment looked like it had been broken into. So at first, the police thought it was accident. A lot of thefts had happened in the area where Brittany lived in the last few weeks, which made this theory even stronger. Did someone try to rob you but failed? Someone broke into Brittany's apartment and killed her while they were doing it. But when the police looked even more, they didn't find any signs of breaking into the house. Also, surprisingly, no valuables were taken, not even Brittany's debit card with the password on it. It's true that the police didn't understand this burglary theory. After all, how often do you hear of someone trying to rob someone in their own home and killing them in the process? It didn't make sense. The police were sure that the crime was done on purpose and that the scene had been set up to look like it had been broken into. Because Brittany let them into their home, the police thought it might have been someone she knew or someone who knew how to get in. As soon as the police realized that nothing had been stolen and there were no signs of a theft, they quickly switched their focus to a murder investigation. Norman was told that Brittany had died, and the police caught his reaction on the car's dash cam as soon as he got to her apartment. Norman was upset and feeling a lot of emotion. A very upset man, broke down in tears and kept asking, "What happened? That's my family. That's my child." The police asked Norman a lot of questions as soon as they caught him. The police thought that someone Brittany knew had to have done something so violent, and Norman was the person they were most suspicious of. Norman told them everything they asked him, and even gave their DNA without a lawyer. When the autopsy results for Brittany came back a short time later, the police learned that she had been found about 12 hours after she had died. Besides that, 2 pieces of DNA from a man that no one knows about were found on her body. One of them had to match Norman's, the police thought. It was checked, though, and the answer did not match. Brittany's DNA did not match Norman's, who is the main person the police are looking for. After that, the police talked to Norman's family about Brittany. Robin, her mum, said that Norman was a loving guy who took care of Brittany, but things had been rough, especially after Brittany told Norman she was pregnant. The police also learned that Norman was having money problems, that debt collectors were after him, and that he was living with his parents in the basement. For this reason, the police wondered if Norman killed Brittany because he didn't want the child. Did he think that having a baby would cost more money? What was the reason? How did he do it if he really was behind Brittany and Zeke's deaths? Norman was with one of his girlfriends, Leanne Horn, at the time of Brittany's attack. This is what the police found out. The police also found texts between Norman and Brittany. It looked like Brittany and Norman were going to meet at her apartment on December 12th to talk about their plans for the future and the baby. He told the police that he never made it, though, and that he instead spent the night with Leanne. The police found this very suspicious. Leanne said she woke up to the sound of Norman arriving at her house around 10:30 p.m. on December 12th, but Norman's phone records showed that he was near Brittany's apartment that night, but his phone turned off after 9 p.m., which was very strange. Also, at the same time, the police went to talk to Brittany's ex-husband, Terry. He was quickly cleared because he wasn't even in town when she was attacked. 2 pieces of his DNA were also found on Brittany's body, but they didn't match. See, the police were pretty sure that Norman was the only person who could have killed Brittany, but the 2 DNA samples found at the scene of the crime made it harder to figure out who did it. The police quickly arrested Norman and charged him with 2 counts of first-degree murder, even though they had almost no proof against him. Norman said he wasn't guilty and was waiting to be tried. There were 2 trials for Norman Clark, which made it even more intense. A lot was at stake, and there were 2 trials. The first trial took place in August 2015, which was almost 4 years after Brittany and Zeke's deaths. During the trial, the prosecution said Norman had a lot of debt and had no plans to have another child with a woman he wasn't even seeing exclusively. Based on the phone records, he went to meet Brittany on December 12th and killed her by attacking her from behind in her bathroom. He then set up her apartment to look like it had been broken into. Based on what they had, the prosecution could say that everything was fine. There was a reason for Norman to attack, and his phone activity showed that he was close to Brittany at the time of the attack. Norman only had a partial alibi, so no one knows for sure where he was. Also, there was no forced entry, which supports the idea that Brittany was attacked by a friend and let that person in. What the prosecution thought was missing was the fact that Norman's DNA wasn't found at the scene of the crime. Whose DNA was that? What happened was that the prosecution thought Norman had a partner who helped him hurt Brittany and her unborn child. But Brittany's diary was also a very important piece of evidence in court. What she wrote in her diary showed how her relationship with Norman really was. She wrote things like, "I deserve better. No matter what, he never asks me or the baby how they are. I miss the man he used to be. Why does he seem to keep things to himself so often? It makes me wonder if he's seeing someone else, or more than one person. He used to care about me a lot." It was clear from these entries that Norman's behavior had changed after Brittany got pregnant. So, was this a reason for him to kill Brittany? For their part, the defense stuck to the story that Brittany was robbed. The fact that Norman's DNA wasn't found at the crime scene was their only strong piece of evidence. The defense said Norman's DNA should have been at the crime scene because it looked like a fight had happened, which meant he had attacked Brittany. Also, the defense said Norman wouldn't have had much time to do the crime. Change out of dirty clothes from the fight, get rid of them and the gun, set up the crime scene, and then sneak out of the house without leaving any evidence. The defense also said that the unknown DNA found on Brittany's body belonged to the thief, and that the police did not look into this matter enough. Basically, the defense said that the police were after a man who was not guilty and who loved his kids and Brittany. There was no violence between them. He did not leave her. Of course they fought sometimes, but who doesn't? Brittany's diary entries were thrown out by the defense because they were too vague and didn't necessarily show any signs of abuse or violence. The defense was right. In any case, the jury thought about the case for almost a whole day after hearing from Brittany's family and other witnesses. There was a tie vote on the jury. The judge ruled 11-1 that Norman was not guilty. So, Brittany's family was still in pain, and the prosecution chose to try to charge Norman again. This meant that plans were being made for another trial. After everything that happened, the fact that Brittany's family tried so hard to find answers about her sad death and were not able to is just heartbreaking. But there was no change at the second trial in 2017. Everything, the evidence, the jury, the proceedings, and so on. The only thing that was different was Norman's lawyer. In the second trial, he had asked for a new lawyer. In the first trial, he was represented by Greg Isaacs, but now he was with Kit Rogers, who used to be a prosecutor in Knox County. This time, it took the jury 4 to 5 days to decide, and when they did, they found, again, there was no trial. 12 people were on the jury, and 11 of them thought Norman was guilty. One person thought Norman was not guilty. It's really strange that the verdict changed, but Norman wasn't charged with anything because the jury couldn't agree on what to do. At this point, you might think that the prosecution would set up another trial. However, in January 2018, Knox County District Attorney General Charm Allen made the decision not to charge Norman Clark a third time. Now, there is still time for new evidence to come forward in the murder of Brittany Eldridge. Norman could be tried again if the state finds stronger evidence against him. But Norman hasn't been tried again yet, so he's free. When it comes to Brittany, her case is still open. Brittany and Zeke's funeral was on December 21st, 2011, at the church she had been going to since she was a child. It was a sad day for everyone. Friends and family of Brittany knew how much she wanted to have a child, but sadly, her life was cut short very quickly, and her unborn child was not spared. People in Knoxville were there for Brittany's family every step of the way. This helped them deal with their terrible loss, but they would never fully recover from what happened. That person or people have not been charged or punished for what they did to Brittany and her unborn child, so the end of the case is not satisfying. Norman was a major suspect, but the law has shown that he is not guilty, at least for now. If he was the one who killed Brittany, then I guess you could say he got away with it. But who knows for sure? There is no one who knows who hurt Brittany. She only wanted to be loved, and had a lot of love to give her son. It breaks my heart to think about what Brittany's family is going through. Their daughter Brittany was brutally killed by someone who didn't think twice about ending her life or the life of an unborn child. It's been almost 13 years since the attack, and they're still waiting for closure and some kind of justice for her. That's all for today's case. If you're captivated by true crime, like I am, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Stay aware, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.